It's our next English lesson. So, yesterday we planned a recount. A recount is a retelling of something. So I showed you how I would write my recount plan about going on a walk around a reservoir. Today I am going to show you how I would turn this into a proper piece of writing. So we are going to make our sentences longer. Can you just stop for a minute and think about what punctuation marks we should include in our sentences in year 2? Pause the video and have a think. That's right, we need to include capital letters, full stops, question marks and exclamation marks. Some of us might start to include commas or apostrophes as well. So if we look at our success criteria for our recount, the recount needs to be written in the first person. So as I reminded you yesterday, that means you need to use the words me, my, I, because you are writing it as if you were saying it. Two of the punctuation marks that we should definitely include are capital letters and full stops. You need to write in time order. You need to include your opinion. That's what you think about what happened. And then there's some time words that you need to include. Now I just want to go back to those words that I shared with you yesterday that mean happy, because we might also try and include these in our writing. Pause the video and try and remember what were those words that mean happy. That's right, we've got joyful, jolly, cheerful, merry, delighted. I'm going to make these a little bit smaller so that I can show you how to do your writing and we can still see them. What I'll do is I'll make my whole page bigger so that you can see clearly what I am writing for each sentence. So looking back at my plan, I will just see if I can show you both pages together. It's not giving me that option to, so we'll just keep going back and forth. Now our opening paragraph, that means a little sentence or couple of sentences, which means 2 about what you did. So we need to include the when, who, what and where. Now I'm going to start with the when. So on New Year's Eve, I walked around Dovestones Reservoir with my family. So let's just go back and check that my sentence includes those 4 things. So I've got New Year's Eve, me and my family, we walked around the reservoir and it was called Dovestones. I've got them all in. So on New Year's Eve, I walked around Dovestones Reservoir with my family. I've put a comma in here because I paused there. If you understand how to use commas, you can give it a good go. If you don't worry. I've also included an apostrophe because Eve means the night before, and it's the night before New Year. So the night before belongs to the new year, and that's why we've got an apostrophe. Again, if you understand that, great. If you don't worry. I'm just going to move these words so that you can still see what I'm doing. I'm going to put, it was such a beautiful day. Now that's my opinion. I've just put a little bit of detail there to interest my reader. So you are going to send these to me on class portfolio, or if you're in Mrs. Jew's and Mrs. Stanley's class, you'll send it to them on class portfolio. We really want to be interested in what you did. So try and use your opinion to make your writing interesting. So on New Year's Eve, I walked around Dovestones Reservoir with my family. It was such a beautiful day. So another success criteria that we need to include is time order. So I need to start with the first thing that I did, using this word here, first. So first, I got out of the car and put my walking boots on. Now, in your class learning, we've been learning about expanded noun phrases. We wouldn't just write walking boots. We've expanded the noun a little bit by telling someone that they are walking boots, but maybe you could include the colour. So if the first sentence has a noun in, a noun is a person, place or object, can you use an adjective, a describing word, to describe the object? So, first, I put on my blue walking boots and pulled on my hat. Oh, that's a bit boring. I wonder if I could expand that. Well, it was actually a woolen hat. I'll put woolen. Now, my hat on that day actually also had a bobble on. So I'm going to put woolen bobble hat. Oh, look here too. There are two adjectives listed here. What punctuation mark do we put in the middle when we list two adjectives? That's right, we need to put a comma. So first I put on my blue walking boots and pulled on my woolen bobble hat. So we need some opinion again. Now I'm going to put, I felt toasty warm, just to try and make my reader interested in what I am writing. So let's just look at the success criteria. So far I've written in the first person. Let me just double check. I, my, yeah, I've been writing in the first person. I've also included my capital letters and full stops. Here, I'm just going to add question mark and exclamation mark because you could also be aiming to include those. So at the moment, I've been doing that, and I've also included one exclamation mark. So far, I'm going in time order, and I've written two sentences that are my opinion. I've also used the word first. So there is the start of my recount. Now let's look back at my next step. Then I walked in the woods and my girl jumped in puddles. Then I walked into the, well, at that time the sun was shining and it was shining through the trees. It was a very beautiful day, but there was actually snow on the ground. So I'm going to expand my noun phrase, woods, and I'm going to put snow-covered woods. Then I walked into the snow-covered woods with the sun beaming through the trees. Oh, does anyone know what beaming means? If there's anyone nearby you at home, can you tell them what beaming means? I'll just pause the video. That's right, it means shining through. If something's beaming, it's a light beam, like a line of light shining through. Then I walked into the snow-covered woods with the sun beaming through the trees. So I was walking along with my husband and little girl, and suddenly my daughter, so instead of putting girl, I've decided to put daughter, which is another word for girl. She is my girl, so she is my daughter. So you could think carefully about your word choices. Suddenly my daughter jumped into a, I'm going to say big puddle, but because she's only 2 years old, it looked particularly big. So I'm going to put huge puddle and got covered in water. Now, you might remember year 2, we were looking at ly suffix endings before the holidays. Oh, look, suddenly something happened all of a sudden. So it happened suddenly. That means it happened quickly. Now, I'm going to start my next sentence with an ly suffix word. Luckily, she was in a waterproof suit. Oh, year 2, this is one of our science words here. Waterproof is one of the materials words that we are learning in science. Perhaps you can tell someone at home what that means. That's right, it means water can't go through it. So luckily she was in a waterproof suit. I found it very funny because she went from being all dry to suddenly drenched. Drenched means covered in water, but she loved it. I'm sure a lot of children, including you and your brothers and sisters, would feel exactly the same. If you were in the waterproof suit, you'd still be happy. So next, we stopped at the hill and looked at the view. So a view is when you look at something, it's what you see. So if you're at the top of the hill, it's what you see across from the hill. I'm going to start with the next time word. Next, I stopped at the top of a hill and looked at the view. So remember, it's a winter day. It's on New Year's Eve. You might remember there was some snow on New Year's Eve this year. I'm going to put the reservoir was glistening in the sun because the water was moving a little bit, so it was shining and it looked sparkly. That's what glistening means. The reservoir was glistening in the sun. In the distance, there were hills with snow on the top. So I'm going to include my opinion now. So I'm going to include how I felt. I'm going to look at these words up here. So I'm going to put, it made me feel very cheerful. Now this is the last paragraph, the last little bit of writing. I've got this on my smart notebook. I need to get some settings changed, so just try and ignore that. I'll move my writing down here, but when you do yours, you don't need to leave a gap. So finally, let's look back at the plan. We got back into the car and had a drink. So remember, this is just a simple plan with a few ideas. We have done lots of things like included exciting words. We have expanded our noun phrases. We've put a comma into list. We've used an exclamation mark. So your plan is just your little ideas, and then we make them bigger when we write. So finally, I got back into the car and had a warm drink. I took off my hat and boots and we drove home. Now, something else we've been learning about in year 2 are exclamation sentences. So I'm going to finish with an exclamation sentence. Can you just pause and have a think? What is an exclamation sentence? There are 2 words that it could begin with. That's right, an exclamation sentence could start with what and how. It finishes with an exclamation mark and it always has a noun and a verb in. So, what a wonderful day I'm going to put. And that's how I'm going to finish my recount. So remember, an exclamation is when you're surprised or when you've got something to say. So this, again, is my opinion. So if I go back up to the top, I can tick off that I've used the rest of the success criteria. And I've still carried on doing all of those things. So hopefully year 2, you can do this and send them on class portfolio to Mrs. Jews, Mrs. Stanley and I. We would love to see them. What I will do, I will zoom out. And then if you want to pause the video here, you can see my example as you write. Try not to copy it exactly because you won't have done what I do. Try and write your own ideas. I hope you're having a lovely day and I will see you for the next English lesson. Bye year 2.